Next up, Russ and I are going to cover all of your favorite boutique labels, taking a deep dive into packaging options, prices, and more. So if you're new to the game or been around for a while like us, this is the video for you. Welcome back to 4K Kings. My name is Matt.
I am Russ.
And welcome to your home of physical media, movie reviews, and more. And today we are here to talk about the lifeblood of physical media, Russ. Boutique labels, our favorites. Your favorites, my favorites, everyone at home's favorites. We've been doing this channel for 3 years now, and each year we've done a state of physical media review, just kind of going through trends, going through, what the boutique labels are up to. And the last one we did, and we shared kind of like the trend year over year, how they've been increasing their output. And I feel like for the most part, in my opinion, all the boutique labels have pretty much been thriving, at least for the most part. We actually had a comment that someone reached out and said what they thought would be interesting is to have a video that kind of discusses all of the boutique labels in one place, kind of going through what they are, what sort of releases they put out, what the packaging is like, just kind of like a primer, if you will. And we actually thought that was a really good idea and thought that would give us an opportunity to kind of share some love with the companies that we love and we feel have been really keeping this game alive. And with 4K being, essentially region free. So if you are overseas, like we're in the United States, if you're in the UK or somewhere else watching this, every boutique label that we're going to cover, if they put out 4K releases, you can watch them on your players. You have to pay those import prices, which suck, but these are for everybody. The very first one we're going to cover is Arrow. It's established in 1991 in England as Arrow Films, an independent distributor and restorer of world cinema, art house, horror, and classic film. In 2009, the Arrow video label was created, specializing in cult and horror home video. Although Arrow is a UK company, they started releasing films in the US around 2015. Their first 4K Ultra HD release was actually Pitch Black, which I do own, and I don't think I realized that was their first 4K, but I did buy that from them.
God, you're so beautiful.
Then in 2021, as we all know, Arrow was sold to Zavvi for £18.5 million. So now you get a lot of Arrow Zavvi collaborations or Zavvi putting out Arrow product, exclusively, that kind of thing.
The typical packaging options you receive, regular or limited edition packaging.
I have that right here, Russ.
What Matt is holding up is the limited edition packaging of Crash, the David Cronenberg masterpiece. This consists of a hard outer box, a booklet, photo, art cards, special limited editions such as Enter the Video Store, Hellraiser Scarlet box set, etc. These arrive in oversized packages, not the standard limited edition style. It'll be an actual box set that you can display prominently and proudly. Arrow puts a lot of care into their packaging.
I'm a huge fan of Arrow, and I must say, you've been, I think, collecting boutique stuff a lot longer than me, and I kind of fell off from collecting for actually a little while. It wasn't until we started this channel up again that I really heavily got back into it. Sorry, my family is, like starving because of my habits here, but
I was never able to establish a family due to never stopping collecting.
Ouch. But I will say that I've sort of got like a renewed love affair for, these types of labels and these releases. And Arrow is definitely one of my favorite over the last couple of years. Like just the quality of the package, like you mentioned, the extras, the restorations, all that kind of stuff that they are known for as well. Like that's another reason why I'm a big fan of theirs. And I think they have such a big following. They are known for their own restorations. They don't typically, get them from other places, with exception. Sometimes they are the UK distributor for some US stuff. Scream Factory comes to mind. They produce their own new features, interviews, documentaries. They assemble the archival supplements on their own. They're not really, and sometimes they grab other stuff from the past, but typically they're creating their own stuff. Depending on the film, there can be a lot, or I've seen fairly minimal as well.
As far as restorations go, I always looked at Arrow as sort of the Criterion for cult horror. And for those watching, we'll get to Criterion in a second, but Criterion is sort of the top of the heap in terms of esteemed films and presentation. And I always looked at Arrow as the cult and horror counterpart.
Well, thanks very much.
What are we paying for these bad boys?
The current price range for Blu-ray is $25 to $30 for a regular edition. 4Ks, $35 to $45 per standard limited edition, and 60 to sky's the limit when it comes to the limited deluxe editions.
Arrow limited editions typically are out for a little while until they're all bought up, and then that same film is put back out again in a regular edition without the booklet and out the hard box. All that to say, I feel like it's fairly priced. I don't think there's anything that's outrageous here for the quality for what you're getting. I don't think they have gotten to a point where I'm like, geez, I can't buy these nearly as much anymore. I almost kind of feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of labels have sort of adopted this model in a lot of cases, like different labels have or are starting to. Like we'll talk about a lot of different ones that do have a hard outer box with the release inside and a booklet or a poster or some art cards. I don't know if Arrow started that, but it seems to me like that was sort of a thing that they put forward and others have sort of said, yes, this is what we need to be doing regularly. If we're calling it a limited, it's got to have a booklet, poster, and art cards.
You're right. I don't know how historically accurate that is, but it definitely is. I felt the same way. They're the granddaddy of the rigid box.
I do think they've helped, lead the boutique label scene for years. I think they've set a high bar. What they're doing is perfect. Yeah,
you get what you pay for. You're never disappointed. Yeah, dude, I think they're God tier.
I agree, and I think there are a lot of labels that probably even I've seen put a similar product out but charge $20, $30 more. And like you said, for what you're getting, for what their transfers are, the features and all that kind of stuff that they themselves are producing, it is the sweet spot.
If you're into cult films and horror films, Arrow is the classiest you're going to get.
You want me to suck his dick?
So talking about classy, Russ, I think that's a great segue.
Thank you, Matt. I did it purposely.
And if anybody knows a classy label, then they know Criterion, the U.S. Boutique label. Criterion has kicked off pretty much, in my opinion, this whole thing we know as boutique labels.
And we have Criterion to thank maybe for physical media in the film world surviving.
Thanks to Criterion.
I think they're also the most well-known, but they also have been at it the longest. They have been, trailblazers in a lot of different ways.
I knew Criterion while home video was still a viable business.
Yeah.
I knew who they were even back when people bought DVDs regularly.
They crawled so that boutique labels could run.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So they were established in 1984. Again, they are like an OG. We're talking 80s. I was only 2 years old when they were established. Pioneered the special edition. As I mentioned, I believe they are the gold standard. They focus on licensing, restoring, and distributing important classic and contemporary films, or snobbish titles.
There's an element.
Pretentious.
If you get into a like a discussion board on a Criterion thread, you better know your shit.
The arrival of video discs was received with much ballyhoo on the part of producers in recent years and with very little acceptance on the part of the consumer. Now there is new hope for success.
They started with laser discs in 1984. They moved through VHS, Betamax, DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K. Their first laser disc was Citizen Kane, and their last was Armageddon. And then their first 4K was Citizen Kane in 2021, which we covered at nearly the birth of this channel. At the very beginning, Criterion standardized quite a few things for, like I mentioned, future boutique labels. They started restorations, letterboxing for widescreen, the bonus features. They were the first to do film commentaries as well as booklets. Now, they don't do like a really hardy, robust booklet, but which I don't mind. I think what they do, again, going back to the classy term, it's usually a classy effort with a couple of nice, thorough, well thought through essays or something about the film itself that you're watching. It goes into a lot of great detail about the transfer itself in that booklet, which I don't see too often. I can't say if I see that with Arrow or any other company. Sometimes Criterion even throws that on the screen when you're watching the movie, but I like that they give you those details in terms of what they're doing. Like I said, I think they probably are, at least in the US, considered the most respected as far as boutique labels are concerned.
And we cannot thank them enough, as I said, for having the foresight of cataloging and preserving films, because I don't think if they hadn't started that in the 80s, as you said, nobody would have had that path to walk down once physical media started going downhill.
The preservation, I'm glad that you said that, because that's I think an important point about what we're even talking about here, what we're even here. I mean, we love buying these movies, but at the end of the day, they're preserving these films for hopefully eternity, but at least for a little bit longer. I mean, you know, like they're restoring it from the depths of some like dank basement that's got like mold on it or whatever, and they're bringing it back to life. And that's important. Like that's important work for movies and film. And I don't think a lot of companies sort of get the recognition for that, or at least that's even focused on. It's like, thank you for doing that, let alone giving me a product I love.
Thanks to Criterion, makes my day, my week, possibly my year.
The typical packaging options that you get with Criterion, the thicker white clear Amaray case. Criterion also sometimes offers digipacks, although it's unclear why they choose this packaging for some films.
I need to know why.
I do too.
I'm desperate to know why.
I love it when they do, and they seem to do it with certain titles that where it's like, okay, Train Spotting makes sense, but then I look, why doesn't Repo Man make sense? No rhyme or reason in my mind, man.
I'm desperate to know.
No rhyme or reason.
Let us know if you know out there.
I don't think so.
There are no limited editions in the Criterion world, and that's one thing that makes dealing with Criterion not as anxiety inducing, as far as you're not going to miss out on that sweet packaging. If you don't pick it up immediately, if you wait 2 years later, that same edition is going to exist, which is awesome. And a pro tip for people out there, if you are beginning, wait for the Barnes & Noble sale that occurs, I'd say, biannually, usually in July and November. And if you don't even want to deal with Barnes & Noble, Amazon price matches it. So about 2 times out of the year, every Criterion title drops 50%. Since you don't have to worry about limited edition packaging, you can just keep a list, buy it all during the sale.
I'm such a lucky boy.
I used to just pick up Criterions whenever, but like you said, as soon as I kind of got wind of your methodology, I was like, all right, unless I'm desperate, like if I'm close, I'm just going to hang in there. Another element that, again, they were sort of a trailblazer on, which is coming up with extras, coming up with featurettes, getting supplemental materials to kind of dive deeper into the movie you just watched. And again, they are known, I think, in my opinion, for producing definitive releases. If Criterion put it out, to me, that's it. Like, someone else might be able to put it out. Someone else might grab another thing here or there to include with it, which on occasion there have been discs that have maybe something that I enjoyed. But when I look back on the Criterion release, it's always got the better slate of features, the more involved stuff that I ultimately would want. Case in point, Night of the Hunter. We're going to talk about Kino Lorber in a second. Night of the Hunter came out through Kino Lorber on 4K, but Blu-ray for Criterion. The Criterion features, there's damn near a whole documentary on the making of the film, whereas on the Kino release, there's 3 small featurettes. Those featurettes were nice, but Criterion knows what they're doing when it comes to putting extras together.
Can I get that through your head, you poor, silly, disgusting little wretch?
And Matt's speaking on a common phenomena in collecting, and that is, how much of a completist are you? If you're someone like me, my dumbass owns Night of the Hunter on Criterion and from Kino because I want all the features, and sometimes due to rights issues, certain studios will have them versus others.
Depending on the film, I've seen some features on certain titles that are like extraordinary. And then I've seen some that just have a couple. To Die For is coming out, very soon. And that was one that I thought, okay, there's maybe some deleted scenes and they fixed the audio, which again is great for people that never had anything because it had never had anything before.
Yes.
It's not a ton, but then there's other titles that I've seen that they, like Citizen Kane as an example, holy crap. And I will say, based on features that I've seen from other studios, if anyone's going to get the original actors, producers, people involved, it's typically Criterion. They have that clout. They've got the name. If they reach out and they say, hey, we're putting a definitive 4K release out of your title, and the director's usually involved with the, restoring the film, the original camera negative, you always see that. The cinematographer, someone is. They're always getting these people back. So if you're ever going to get that, Criterion's going to be the ones to get it. Not say others can't. With Criterion, you typically always see someone coming back from the production to talk.
Yeah, it turns me on.
What are these running us, Russ? How are these hurting our wallets?
As of the taping of this segment, the typical Blu-ray that Criterion produces runs about $39.95, and their 4K retails at $49.95.
But if you're like Russ and I, these titles are $20 for the Blu-rays and $25 for the 4Ks.
Exactly.
And that's the double truth, Ruth.
$50 is expensive, but justifiable in most cases, but $25 is like... So just to wrap up Criterion, Russ, I mentioned it already. I feel like they're one of the best in the game to do it. The titles, packaging, restoration, extras, all that stuff. I don't think $50 is cheap, but it is still fairly close to what you pay for at Arrow. You're not getting sort of that booklet and photos and posters and things, but you're paying for being a snob.
They are literally God tier. They are the gods. They gave birth to everything we're discussing.
Am I wrong in thinking that art cards, posters, and booklets are beneath Criterion? I mean, I feel like everything like that seems like it's beneath them, or they would feel that. It's like, look, you're getting a classy-ass, bomb-ass new art from our art department. You're getting the best that you could possibly get in the 4K restoration and all the features you ever would want. This nice, hardy, white amaray case. Suck it.
I don't give a flying fuck into a rolling donut.
Kino Lorber, I've talked crap on Kino Lorber for a little while, I feel like. I called them basic for a while, and I feel like they've upped their game.
That was a running joke in the beginning of this channel.
It was. I feel like they've upped their game for a while, and I want to say I'm sorry to Kino. They are a great little label that really I feel like tries the best they can. They're not a Criterion, but they are doing a great job, and let's dive in and talk a little bit about them for a second. Also very old. 1977, they were like called Kino International a long time ago, distributing art house, documentaries, classic and rarely seen films, and world cinema. Bought in 2009 by Lorber HT. And then they made the Kino Lorber Studio Classics line, which is pretty much all the releases I feel like that I buy anymore. Just say KL Studio Classics on the side. That was in 2014. And like I said, really after that, they've really been upping their physical media game. They entered the 4K in 2019 with one title. And ever since, I feel like they've been really, kicking them out.
I have always defended their honor when you tried to disparage them. And I've also described them as scrappy.
Thanks.
When it comes to like transfer and packaging options, we have heard about them being hit or miss, Silence of the Lambs, but then they'll put out something as in Stephen King's Misery that looks incredible. I personally have never had an issue with a Kino transfer, but I wouldn't also say that they are the creme de la creme.
No, I don't think they're known for being the creme de la creme. I think they're known for doing their best. Exactly. I think they're, I don't want to say inconsistent. I think, like you said, I've seen some that are great transfers, some that people have been like a little bit less than happy with.
Every once in a while, there'll be something that just makes you scratch your head like, huh, how did that happen? As far as their packaging goes, it's nothing too sturdy. It's basically your standard Blu-ray packaging. For years, they did not do slips. It would be a very rare occurrence for Kino to include a slipcase, but that is becoming standard practice now, especially with the 4Ks. Their spines are usually consistent.
Yeah.
They're black, white, but
they do look neat together.
I was just about to say, if you're the type of collector who sorts your films out by label, Kino looks great next to each other.
You're right, Russ. I mean, they are doing their thing. Their packaging, is nice. It's just right. It's nothing too crazy, but it looks neat on your shelf. As far as their extras are concerned, they're not usually. I don't see them breaking new extras that often. I typically just see them gathering up what was already out there in most cases, and so how stack the releases is typically going to be relying upon what came before it.
As far as pricing goes for Kino, moderately priced, I would say. Modest. You get what you pay for. They're not going to knock you out features-wise or packaging-wise, so they're not going to knock you out price-wise either. It ranges from about $25 to $30 for a Blu-ray and $35 to $40 for 4K, but these prices typically drop, and as I've stated previously, that is retail.
When we covered Monster Squad, it was on Amazon for $49.95 and on Kino's website for $49.95, and I bought it for $31. So eventually it comes down. Yeah. I was kind of shocked sometimes at the prices, but they come down, and like they end up being like just right. So overall, Kino providing a classic package for a reasonable price. Always doing a new transfer for the 4Ks and a lot of 2K transfers too. We've covered a lot of their releases that were only Blu-ray, but they were still bringing a new 2K transfer in there. And even if the features aren't always there, it is a decent value.
Can we just get out of here?
Yes.
Jumping on over to S Shout and Scream Factory. Another label that is dear in a lot of people's hearts. They've been around a really long time as well. I feel like they've been sort of bolstering the physical media game, not Shout in general, but
I'd
Scream
say
Factory
Scream
themselves
Factory, yes.
has also really been kind of, like a touchstone, like a cornerstone of boutique
It does,
labels.
and Scream Factory keeps the lights on for Shout.
So Scream Factory is an offshoot of Shout Factory, and Shout itself has been around forever. And I always kind of forget about them in a way, because forever you see like DVD box sets being sold on television and all kinds of stuff when you're growing up.
CDs.
Yeah, and it was a lot of CDs, and it was always Shout. That was them. They were like basically a distributor of media like since 2002. And then Scream Factory 2012, so coming up on its like 12th year anniversary, and they specialize in cult and classic horror films. Scream and Arrow kind of have a nice counterpart, UK to US. Like I mentioned, sometimes they cross over with what they're releasing. And I feel like they do match a little bit. As of 2023, Shout has agreements with Paramount, WB, Studio Ghibli, MGM, Universal, Sony, and a ton more. So, they've got their hands on a lot. They could put out a lot of different titles, and they already have.
Packaging is kind of tricky when talking about Shout and Scream.
That's
I mean,
true.
there are a lot of options, there are a lot of variations. Usually what happens, though, is they'll arrive in standard or collector's editions, and these come typically stacked with features and a slipcase, such as Carrie, displayed beautifully by Matt. Blue art is typically redone and stylized on the slipcase, which sometimes can leave something to be desired, but sometimes tonally is so on point, it's the raddest thing you've ever seen. And just in case you don't like it, when you remove the slip, you can always reverse the cover and get your original artwork, which I like that Scream and Shout do. The 4K releases now seem to be bringing the original art back on the slip. Scream will also offer you a steelbook on certain titles, and these will all release typically on the same day. Same everything, same transfer, same features. You lose nothing. It's just more of a question of do you collect steelbooks or just collector's editions with slip cases. It is also good to note that if you are interested in owning everything, you must order directly from Shout Factory, as you will also receive a poster.
They do bundles with posters, pins, stickers.
Yeah. Yes. It's a way of driving traffic away from Amazon, and you're paying shipping, but you're going to get a little something extra.
Yeah, the poster's cool. You have to pay a little bit extra if you want to go in on some of these bundles that they do, which are a little pricey. I mean, unless you're a pin collector and all that kind of stuff. Going back to a lot of their former like Blu-ray releases, they were known for getting a ton of new features on these collector's editions. I remember seeing like a ton of new stuff for all of these titles that everybody really loved, and it was like, wow, they were like really like gathered a lot, kind of like a Criterion situation where things and people were coming back to talk about these great films, and people from the horror world, they're hanging around. Like they're ready to talk about this stuff over and over again. So you saw a wealth of stuff come back for these horror movies. But lately with the 4Ks coming out, they've kind of got lazy on the feature side. They're just kind of saying what we got from before is fine, and we're carrying that over.
It's not so much about breaking new features, though. The thorn in everyone's side is about Scream Factory in particular these days, myself included, is lack of new titles. I mean, we went on this long run where every 4K that was announced was just an upgrade from the standard 2K collector's edition that we've all already collected.
True.
So if you are a beginner, it's a great time to jump in now with Scream Factory, because they're still just pretty much getting their legs off the ground with 4K in terms of reissuing their back catalog. But it's interesting that, like you said, the Shout side seems to be taking over. We've noticed titles recently like Point Break, Natural Born Killers. Like, it used to be the opposite.
For what they're charging too, I mean, they're kind of in the same price range as like a Kino, so I feel like their value is decent. Back in the day, it was about $30 for the blue. It was about $40 now for a 4K. But again, they typically drop. The Creepshow 4K, as an example, was $28 when I ended up picking it up for my son.
I will say this, though. If you're a slipcase collector, Shout guarantees them for the first 3 months. If you order after 3 months, you may still get one, but it's just while supplies last.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
So just to wrap up, Shout Scream, solid, reliable name in physical media, as we all know. Again, they're one of the OGs too. I feel like, as far as 2012, the game was off the ground, but they really helped catapult it. I feel like, with a lot of the horror releases that they put out there, even though they haven't been putting out too many new fresh ideas in the 4K arena, it's still a quality package and a solid state of features for a first-time buyer, like you said, Russ.
That really answers my fucking question.
Next up is Severin. Founded in Los Angeles in 2006, they were created specifically to put out physical media. As they put it, they're dedicated to the world's most provocative cinema for physical media. Severin's carved out a niche for themselves, in my opinion. I don't know them super well or the titles they put out, but since their inception, they've gained a ton of fans, like, for the type of titles they do put out.
Severin may be a little offbeat for the casual film fan, but they do great work for their audience.
I got molested in a little boy's room.
They're responsible for their own restorations and their own bonus features. This is my beauty right here, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Most but not all of their releases arrive in a standard case with slip. To my recollection, it was the first time I ever came across the black casing.
I have never seen the black Blu-ray case before them.
I may have, and I've just blocked it from memory, but you're right. I completely associate it with Severin now.
I'll amend what I just said to say this is the first time I've seen a company regularly use them for every release. You might get like a random color every once in a while for something cool, but I've never seen a company just use black, and I thought that was pretty cool. 4K is black, but for Blu-ray to also be black just kind of makes it feel dark, dank. This title is fucking dank as shit. That's why it's a black Blu-ray case.
And it's intentional. That's the vibe they're going for.
About the extras, Russ, you said that they, create their own bonus features, which they do. A lot of these titles are very unknown, very, for an audience of a very small amount of people, but there's a very loyal and dedicated audience to them. And these guys go out, this outfit, they go out there and they find the people involved in some way. Again, this isn't just a lot of times retrospective, like a fan talking about it. They usually get the directors and the actors or whomever to come back and talk about these bizarre one-off films that these people in these movies probably never thought anyone would see.
Dude, I own the Peter Noonan masterpiece Night Killer, and you would think that this was Citizen Kane based on the features.
Yeah, dude. It just shows you what they care about when it comes to this physical media.
You're going to have to pay the price.
I will say, though, dude, I feel like they are a little on the pricey side, which is cool for what they're doing. Again, they're a small group and they are doing a lot for these titles, and they need to charge probably a certain premium to continue to do what they're doing. So I get it. They're $30 to $40 for a Blu-ray, $50 to $60 for a 4K. They do come down a little bit. And they do a ton of great box sets, sometimes which are in the $100 range. So that Sensual World of Black Emmanuel I always thought was cool. Not just the box set, but there was a bag. There was all kinds of different tchotchkes that went with it. They do a lot of great work in that regard as well.
Bottom line, if you're a lover, collector of cult, sleaze, B-movie, exploitation fare, Severin is for you. They constantly put out those titles that people have forgotten while giving them the deluxe treatment that 5 people want. It's a little pricey, as you mentioned, Matt, but you do get what you pay for. It's pricey, but you're getting quality. If the titles were a bit more accessible in the Arrow vein, I think Severin may be on a lot more people's radar, but they are definitely a company that should be on yours as a collector.
Lastly, Russ, in the lineup of main U.S. boutique labels is Vinegar Syndrome. Vinegar Syndrome, who was founded in Connecticut in 2012. I love their mission statement. They state that they're specializing in protecting and preserving genre films from the dreaded vinegar syndrome, which is the destruction of the film over time. It slowly decomposes and starts to sort of smell in a way that does resemble what vinegar smells like, and they call that the Vinegar Syndrome. So they're trying to protect films in the way that Criterion is trying to preserve legendary, classic, iconic films in their opinion. Vinegar Syndrome is doing the same thing for
only they're saying it in a cooler fucking way.
Much cooler way. And for their niche, their genre of films that they are, proud of and protective of.
Thank you.
Originally created to restore X-rated films that were lost, it's now expanded to cult, exploitation, horror, and action, but X-rated definitely is still in the mix. Similar to Severin, Vinegar Syndrome has carved out a nice niche for themselves. They have a ton of fans. I am a big supporter of what they're doing.
The titles can be a little offbeat, but this is an outfit for collectors by collectors. They are responsible for their own restoration work and bonus features. I feel like I'm repeating myself when I say that, but trust me, that is very unique in this game. Vinegar Syndrome titles typically arrive in a regular box with a slipcase. Their VSU Ultra is the deluxe package with a magnet clasp box and booklet, such as Roadhouse. In recent years, this has been attributed to major 80s, 90s, mainstream titles, something that they wouldn't have gotten their hands on in years past.
Just lucky, I guess.
When you were talking about the packaging, you were talking about, you know, the slip cases and the different types and styles of releases that they put out. The VSUs are awesome.
Definitely.
This label kind of falls into the Severin category for me, and the titles they put out I'm not always too familiar with, but they do hit more than Severin does. There's these titles that they do put out that at least I remember, I know. Do I want them? Do I not? But their VSUs are these excellent, you know, packages that they put out. On top of that, their special features are great. It's all self-produced. Again, going back to the Roadhouse, there's a ton of self-produced stuff on there. These are titles that not a lot of people have seen in some cases, Roadhouse aside, of course, but are getting a wealth of features that put so many high-profile titles to shame that I own. And I feel like that goes to show what kind of company you're dealing with. These are people that love physical media. That's what they're here for. It's not like Paramount. They're just going to give you that old 4K of Major League with Charlie Sheen's hair on the back.
Fuck them and the horse they rode in on.
And it is really exciting to see them broaden their horizons with more mainstream titles while maintaining that integrity we've come to know from their more obscure ones.
When it comes to the price, Russ, what are we looking at here?
Pricey. 30 to 40 for a blue is about the average, I'd say, and I'd say 50, 60 for a 4K would be the mean price.
The quality of the product is awesome.
It really is.
Those slipcases they do, the detail on those slipcases, these magnet class VSU boxes, they're awesome.
I've showed you the slipcases just for like standard casing, right? Not the magnet clasp ones. They are the thickest slipcases I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, they are worth every penny.
Yeah, so if you are, you know, a lover, collector of sort of cult sleaze, B-movie fare, Vinegar Syndrome is definitely for you. They have started releasing more well-known titles, I would say. And by well-known, I mean just ones that had even a little bit of a name and what you would recognize. It's not completely obscure out of the blue, or you have to take a chance every single time they put a release out. So to wrap up, these are our favorite and the most well-known US physical media boutique labels. Arrow, as we mentioned, is seated in the UK, but they also have a US side, so we kind of felt like they were should be included here. Maybe we'll double dip when we go over to the international side of things. We're going to drop a part 2 of this video down the line where we cover our favorite international labels, our European labels, Germany, UK, Umbrella, Imprint. We got a lot more to talk about, but thank you for watching this video. Thank you for checking us out. If you have a favorite label, let us know. Who should we take a deeper dive into? Who should we review? Who should we look into that maybe we're missing?
If you're not subscribed, make sure you do so immediately. Like this video, check us out for future videos, check out our live streams, and keep supporting physical media.